Hello, guys. Welcome to another amazing session of Interview with the Masters. And today we are thrilled to have Pascal Campion as one of our masters. Throughout this Q&A, he's going to be talking about how he got started in the industry, his experiences, and even possibly taking a few minutes to kind of just showcase some of his art and, possibly do some stuff on Photoshop for you guys. So thank you so much once again for attending. Before we begin, wanted to make a couple of announcements. Fall registration for CG Masterclass is currently open. So I've already sent a few attachments or sent everybody a link to our website. Definitely make sure to check that out. Also, we wanted to let everybody know that we just launched 5 new workshops. And Pascal happens to be one of the amazing instructors who's done a workshop for us demonstrating his entire process. We also have Jason Shire, as well as a couple of few artists that are that we have involved, including Section Studios, Paul Christopher, who's one of our instructors, and Stephen McLeod, who's also an instructor. So definitely check those out. Some amazing content. So without further ado, I guess I'd like to introduce you guys to Pascal.
Hello.
Hey, how's everything, Pascal?
Everything's good. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great over here. Just enjoying this beautiful Saturday morning, or Saturday afternoon, I should say.
It is very, very hot in LA right now.
Yeah, it is, as usual. But you know what? It's the summer is just starting to cool down a bit, so it's a little nicer.
Yeah, it's the same here. It's like in the Bay Area. It's kind of like cooling off a little bit, and it's starting to get a whiff of fall coming. Love it. I love it.
Yeah. No, that's great. Did you see the shuttle by any chance? Did you happen to catch that yesterday?
No. Actually, I saw tons of pictures right and left on the web, and some of our friends showing us pictures of the shuttle, but like I didn't see any. I didn't see it at all myself.
Oh, well, you're a pretty busy man, so I would imagine, it's hard to pry you away from your Wacom tablet.
Yeah.
So how did you get started? Tell us a little bit about yourself and.
Well, it's a lot of chance actually. I grew up in France. I was actually born in the States. But I grew up in France. My father was American, my mom is French, and I was born in New Jersey. And before I was 2 years old, I went back to France. Or my mom and my parents divorced, and I went back to France, and I grew up in France. But because I had dual citizenship, I have an American passport. So I did all my studies in France, and I went through high school and art school, college in France. And after graduation in 2000. I decided I was going to come to the States to try it out for about a year. My initial plan was that I was going to come visit the States because I could, and also because it was kind of a dream, to see the United States and just live in the United States. I had come to the States before, but because of my dad, but he was always living in those strange places like in Alaska or the Virgin Islands. He never lived. It was great. It was a phenomenal experience. He had this job that just took him
everywhere.
Right and left, he was, but never on the mainland. Never like in a normal thing like you would see in movies where, like I remember in Alaska, there was one car in the whole town, and I was just shocked that there was a car, because everybody else had like 4-wheelers or 3-wheelers or pickup trucks. It was a very small town in the peak of Alaska called Nome. Mm-hmm. And at the time it was really, really small. Now it's bigger. And then the Virgin Islands, we went there right after the Hurricane Hugo had destroyed the island. So his job was to rebuild things how can I explain this? He was a maritime engineer, so he would be sent to places where there was no civilization, so he could build stuff to bring in civilization. Like he would go to the Virgin Islands after the hurricane and build a port so they could actually bring in ships with stuff to reconstruct.
Wow.
In Alaska, he was there to build a port as well and involved dredging and stuff. So he was always sent to those
That must have been pretty interesting for you as a kid to, kind of witness and see all of this.
Well, yes and no. It's amazing to have a dad that's an adventurer, because he was always like right and left. He used to say that he did tripped around the world twice. Once, one way, once the other way around.
Yeah.
But we never got to see him because he was gone 6 months out of the year on missions, on trips and stuff. Which is one of the reasons my parents separated, actually, because my mom was raising a little bit by herself. But anyway, so I went back to France, and I did all my studies there. Went to high school, went to art school, and after that, I came to the States in 2000. Thinking I was going to stay here for about a year and then go back to France and actually really start working.
Mm-hmm.
And then I came here, and I actually never really went back.
Oh, wow. So you've just been here ever since?
Yeah, I've been here for 12 years now. It was not always here in the Bay Area, but I've been in the States for 12 years. And I think I've been back to France 3 or 4 times to visit since I came here. So it's not like I've been back all that often.
Oh, okay.
But when I first got here, it was in Kansas City because one of my brothers actually already lived in the States. He'd been living in the States since he was 14 years old. So I came to visit him, stay with him at the beginning, and that was my Lennon base. And at the time, I had I didn't particularly care for animation at all, or almost none. I'll come back to that later. But I grew up wanting to draw comics and wanted to be into graphic novels. I wanted to work for Marvel when I was younger. Then realized I didn't really like that. But well, that's another story. I'll probably get to later. But so I came to the States, and I remember the first weekend I got there, my brother took me around and built a bunch of parts to build a computer, and he built me my very first personal computer. Mm-hmm. And then I spent the next couple of weeks playing around in software called Flash, and I didn't know much about it. I had seen a little bit of it right before I came to the States because my last semester in France in college I did this exchange with a school in Boston where I went to, and I started working in this company called Tom Snyder Production, where I had a little bit of experience with computers, and that was my very first foray into computers. But then with my brother was really the first time I had my things and just started really working straight, only with the computer. So I picked up Flash and started doing some animations, with the hand-drawn animations. And I started posting those on the web, and I think it took about like a month and a half, 2 months, when people started calling me, asking me to do work for them, and eventually offered me a full-time job in animation as an animator. And that was in the very first full-time job I had was in Portland, Oregon, at a company called Flying Rhinoceros. Before that, I did a little storyboarding gig with Wildbrain, with Monomedia in San Francisco, which is funny because I live in the Bay Area now, so it's kind of came full circle. It was a funny thing. But then from that job, they laid me off and never told me, actually, which is also funny.
That's always fun.
Yeah, not in a fun way. It was a time. It was the end of the year 2000, and that's when the .com money was starting to run out for everybody. And because the show I was working on had been canceled, but no one bothered to let me know. So I was waiting for the scripts to come in because I was a freelancer, and they never came. And I would try emailing people that I was talking to there, and no one was responding to me. And by chance, one day, they'd send out this group email, and I replied to it and asked person, and it told me that the show had been canceled, and the person I was working with was not there anymore. So I was like, oh, that's great. So that's how I learned I wasn't working there anymore. But after that, I worked at this place called Fire Rhinoceros, and they hired me as an animator, as a Flash animator, and they probably thought that I knew how to animate and how to animate with symbols. And for those of you guys who don't know, working with symbols is working with puppets. Basically, you have digital parts to the characters, very much like they do in CG animations, but much simpler. And you just move those around, you don't draw. And when they put me in front of the computer and asked me to animate a scene or work on a scene, I hated it. I just couldn't take it. I was pretty good at it, but I really didn't like it at all. I didn't like the process of not drawing to animate. It would just really made me frustrated because it was so slow and so painful for me.
And this was 2D animation, or?
Yeah, that's 2D animation. That's Flash animation.
Okay.
So then it was just moving bits of characters around. but then I was ready to quit and just go back to France at that point, and I'd been in the States for like 4 or 5 months, I think, at the time. And I'm sorry?
No, I'm sorry. Continue.
Yeah. But then the storyboard artist of that company quit and got a job at a different place in Seattle. And and they were looking for a story artist, so I applied for that position. And I started doing storyboards for animation. And I learned a lot doing that. That was great. That was actually, I loved doing that. I ended up being the main story guy for all the shorts they were doing in that company, and I learned a lot about storytelling for animation. Because the school I had gone to was it was an illustration section, but it was a storytelling section. So all we did was learn how to tell stories through images. And this was a way to, and since I hadn't been into animation before, this was a way for me to like understand the principles of like storytelling for animation, which is slightly different in terms of technique, in terms of like.
So, but didn't you go to school for animation?
No.
So.
No. I went to school I went to an art school, and then I went into an illustration section, and the illustration section was a storytelling section, meaning that they didn't force us to draw. So a lot of the kids in our class did not draw. They didn't want to impose any type of technical techniques on us. They didn't want us to like all draw the same way or all know how to mix colors the same way or stuff like that. But they would make a sketch, whichever way we wanted, just because they thought it was important for us to be able to put it on paper or in a certain graphic form or the ideas that we had in our minds. And the whole point of the classes was to teach us or help us understand how to tell stories through images. So my computer just went dead. So some of the kids in the class would take out magazines and cut out like people in the magazines and make like images like this. One of my friends would do like these little puppets in nine clay, and what do you call it, plasticine, and bake them, and then she would like take pictures of those and make little stories like that. And of course, half of us went to that school thinking we were going to learn how to draw, like all the guys would see in the magazines. And at the beginning, we were a little disappointed that we weren't taught that. It was so frustrating. Some of the kids in that school actually quit and went to different schools to learn how to draw. At that time, I remember one of the kids in our class went to the school that I had never heard, or I had very little heard about before, called the Gobelin, and it turns out, it's the Gobelin school, which is...
It's an amazing school.
It's an amazing school, yeah. But I liked the fact that they weren't imposing anything on us, and I liked the fact that there was no grades in that school either, and you didn't have to turn in anything on time. They were trying to make you do this, but they were really basing their education on the fact that you were probably going to be a freelancer afterwards, that you're going to have to be responsible. So if you were going to make mistakes about discipline, about everything, might as well do them now while you're in school than later when you're in the real world. So they would really treat us like professionals. The way we would get to the next class at the end of the year is like they would have a big jury, and we'd go and present all the work we've done during the year. And of course, they'd been following us, the teachers, so they knew about us and our working habits and stuff like that. And they would decide as a group whether we should go to the next level or not. And it was a bit of a strange type of education for me who had never gone to something like this before. But it was great because I learned so much, and I didn't know at the time I was learning. It's funny. It's not only when I started working, especially at Flying Rhino, when I started doing the storyboards, that I realized I knew so much about how to tell a story. It was so natural.
And where did that come from?
Well, I think for one thing, I've always liked telling stories through images. That was one of the reasons I started to draw when I was a kid. It wasn't to be a good artist. It was to be able to tell stories.
Just to express yourself.
To express myself. And I remember clearly thinking, I must have been like 10 or 11, thinking that I needed to learn how to draw to be able to tell the stories I wanted to say, because I was drawing those little comic strips, and I had a hard time drawing certain things. And then I remember telling myself, my gosh, I should really learn how to draw, because I can't tell that story if I can draw this. But it was never because I wanted to draw for the sake of drawing. That came later, and that was actually, there's always a part when you go to art school, you get a little bit lost because you're exposed to so many different things. You have so many different people around you that do different things, and you want to do as good as them, and you never feel you're as good as them.
Different
So
styles.
Different styles, different ways of approaching stuff. You get there and you realize some of those kids there can draw like circles around you or have this incredible creative mind or see the world in a different way that is so creative, and I felt that was just so normal in a way.
Yeah.
And for a while I was just trying to like find a style, try to I think most kids do that. They try to find a style, a thing that makes them different in art and actually in life as well.
Well, see, that's a really good point that you brought up, because I've got to say you definitely have such a unique style, than a lot of the artists that it's like that I've seen. It's like there's just a lot of expression, and as you said, it's like it's not, it's the simplicity of it, more than anything else. It's like you evoke a certain mood, So where do you think that? I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was actually going to answer to that point, but go ahead. Where do I think that this comes from?
Yeah.
Well, it comes exactly from there, because I was looking for a style for a long time, and then our teachers were really good about telling us, we don't want to impose a graphic style on you, because we want you to come up with your own way of drawing, because it will be yours. They used to call this our graphic system of representation, and they're always about try to draw as simply as possible, at least at the beginning, because if you can't tell a story with simple images, you will not be able to do it with a fully rendered image. The rendering will come later. First is focus on the storytelling. So they would make us use stick figures or elements as simple as possible, and really make us understand the importance of every single element in an image. They also, so many other things we talked about, like what are stories and stuff like that. And that really stuck with me because it was hard for me to do simple, because at the time I was still, I was reading all those graphic novels, the ones we get in France that are super highly detailed and beautiful artwork, and I was, I felt I wasn't good enough to do that. But doing stick figures, that's what I had been doing as a kid. I was doing all those humongous comics, dozens of pages, just dual stick figures, walking around and stuff, which I actually did some animation with later on. But, so it was great for me to actually come back to something to try to work with something very, very simple, like stick figures. And the fact that it was accepted in my school and the teachers really appreciated it. They actually liked those almost better than what I was trying to do if I was doing a more rendered image. Really helped me develop a sense of storytelling without having to worry about the look. And the look came later when I stopped trying to copy anybody. I really made a serious effort at one point to stop looking at other people's art, and by other people's I mean not just my friends, but graphic novels and older artists, and just try to draw what I understood. And little by little, this style emerged, and it's funny because it's more like an absence of any style. Because what you see there, for this image, for instance, is it's probably the best I could do in terms of drawing. That's it. It's people have asked me before to do more rendered, more things. I'm like, I can't. That's pretty much what I do. I'm sure I could learn it, but I think I don't really want to, because that's not my main point. My main point is actually tell the stories and use the elements I have, the skills I have, and as I go along, as I tell more stories, create more images, the stories I want to talk about are more. How can I say? They're more precise, more deep. I think more deep is because it's more about, now I'm starting to get to the point where I want to talk about emotions. I want to talk about the thoughts behind the thoughts. I want to, something a little bit
more involved, more in depth.
More involved, more in depth. And for this, I'm realizing that in order to do this, my skills develop accordingly. Yeah. To that, and I'm not sure if the skills bring on the fact that I want to tell those types of stories or vice versa. I mean, I think they work both together.
Yeah.
It's like sketching.
Yeah. What inspires you? And to go into a little bit more detail by that, it's you look at these different images and the themes are all over the place, in terms of these moments. It's like what we're looking at right now with these elephants and these hippos. It's so whimsical, and then you have one where there's this family looking like they're doing a Skype session with mom. You have two kids that are playing, in the ocean, in the beach. It's like you have this little kid with this doll. It's like, where do all these moments come from?
Well, a lot of the ones, like, let's say, like, probably, like, this, for instance, or the one with all the kids and all the family, the Sky thing, this comes straight from my family. This, for instance, is based on the where my studio is in Burlingame, in the Bay Area. This is my wife and me, or a vision of my wife and I. And this is my son Max, for instance, are based on. They're always based on stuff. They're not exactly that. So a lot of it comes from my personal life. And some of it come, like for this one, for instance, it's a good example because the kids in this image are based off my kids, but this is an experience I found when I was a kid because we lived in a very rural area. And I remember biking through the forest, the smaller forest we had, was exhilarating because it was a little scary. It was all downhill. You could always hit a tree, but at the same time you had the smell. When you go fast with the bicycle, the smell comes into your nose at such a high speed. It just creates a beautiful feeling. I'm not sure how to describe it.
Yeah.
Stuff you can experience as a kid. So I try to use all the emotions I've had, I've lived, the experiences I've had, what I see around me, and use them to tell stories. Another thing too is music is a humongous inspiration to me. I'll sit down and then to do my sketch of the day every morning, and most of the time I don't know what I'm going to talk about. I don't know what I'm going to draw. Well, I'll put on the music and I'll just whatever music comes to my mind tends to inspire me to do things.
So what?
It'll put me in a certain mood.
Yeah, and you could obviously pause some of these images on your end, but I would like to know like for a particular image if you could point out like, oh, for this image I was listening to this particular song or so on.
For this one, I cannot remember this one's interesting actually. For this one, I cannot remember what I was listening to, but I do know that I wanted to create this area here. All I wanted to do was this light. I have something about light. Not as much about there's light and there's heat. I wanted to create a sort of like heat that you can see when you see the light coming through the window and hitting the ground. It creates this sort of like this liquid or half liquid heat, not liquid mist heat that I actually adore. And that was the whole point of this image. The rest was just built around because I was probably listening to music when I was doing it, and then I got carried away by like just drawing, and then it's fun to just build things as you go along. It's like I just pull one thing, and that was the whole thing here, was just to build this thing. So
everything else was inspired by that.
Yes.
Because I see you carried that down to the laptop area, where you still get a lot of that light coming in from the window.
Yeah, and this type of heat makes me want to just sit down and relax, which is why this guy is here. So this guy actually is the support to the story. Because that's I always try to tell stories through my images, but the way I tell stories is that I try to create moments that feel like they're in between, and that you feel that something's happened before and something's going to happen after.
Yeah.
And that the real story is like what is in between those things. This guy here, he's looking at the laptop. You don't know what's on the laptop, but there's 2 cups of tea right here. So there may be someone else in there. There's pictures here that actually represent him with a girl, and there's a little teddy bear here with a little love letter here, which you might have gotten for Valentine's Day. You don't know.
Yeah.
I put all those clues in all my images, and most people don't catch it on the first, second, or third read, but they might catch it later, and I know they're there, so that's for me.
It's just absolutely amazing. As I just kind of looking at it and seeing all the details, that you're pointing out. It's a really really beautiful piece.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. No, I don't know what to say anymore. But so I had an apartment pretty much like that in college. My apartment was just a tiny apartment. So it's based off something I've lived. I used to have like books like this at the bottom of my bed, and I would write stuff or sketch stuff in it. There's a different color version of it. Before going to bed, I actually still have this little cube thing we don't use it anymore, but tells time. So it's all based on stuff we have here, and I could go on more about the different layers of stuff.
Yeah, like, no, it's fine. It's like actually, it's one of those things. Whenever we do these sessions, we realize like how many, how inspired people are, and just all the different questions. So in order to try to get all these questions answered, and also have you start kind of messing around with Photoshop and Flash and kind of doing a little doodle here and there. We want to try to get through this. But so one of the questions we had was if you could turn any story into a 2D animated movie, what would it be?
That's really interesting. I am getting asked that a lot. I'm always being approached to do either TV series or short films or movies about something I want to talk about. And interestingly enough, the stories I want to talk about are family stories or relationships between fathers and sons or moms and sons and people together. They're like more like drama than happy. Well, they will be happy again. I don't really like sad stories, but I like the dramas. I like the human relationships. The thing, though, is that those images are not meant to be animated. That's the thing that I get a lot of the questions, like, why am I doing those images, and what are they for? And the answer is, like, they're for just this. They're self-contained pieces. They tell the story, and they're just images for the sake of telling the story in one image. I don't necessarily want to do, when I'm doing those, I'm not thinking about doing them for a longer project. I don't know if that answers the question, but that's something that I get a lot. It's like, why am I doing those images? And
yeah, it's it's funny because I work at DreamWorks, and we have just a lot of amazing artists, visual development artists, and I remember talking to another one of our instructors, Nate Ragg, who's an amazing character artist, an art director, and so I was just talking to him about a project that he was prepping for. And I saw some of your images, that he had kind of been putting together to do this presentation to some of the producers at DreamWorks. And I was thinking, wow, like, so is Pascal working here now? He's like, well, yeah, he's freelancing. He's kind of, helping us out on this particular project. And I gotta say, it kind of threw me off for a bit, because I was like, wow, I just, your style is just so unique. I didn't see it lending itself to the type of films that we do, but one of the things that I was amazed at is just, the way you do set up a scene, or an emotional moment, because of its simplicity, allows you to focus more on that emotion, and not looking at the textual detail and, the sophisticated, it's like, designs of all these different things. You really just take in the emotion, and you take in that moment. And so, no, go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny you mention that, because I'm really good at that, but then like people also assume that I can do more in terms of like the graphic detail. And I remember working on a movie with you guys as well, where then they asked me to, like, okay, now can you just like do a final version of that piece? And that's kind of understand what they're asking. That is final.
That is the final.
And they were like, well, can you add more detail? Can you make it cleaner? And I tried, and then we eventually realized that that's it.
Well, it's funny because I think every artist has a particular strength. Like Nico Marlet, who's an amazing designer. He doesn't like painting much.
Oh, really?
And so, yeah, it's like if you look at most of his sketches, they're very loose and, beautiful sketches, but actually whenever they're rendered or painted or fully colored and visualized, that's actually another artist doing that.
Yeah,
it's like, so,
I knew that.
Yeah, so it's one of those things where it's like he just doesn't like to get into all these textural details and all these, like hyper-realistic renders. He just likes to just kind of draw these very expressive, loose characters. So with you, it's like when I see these, it's like I said, it evokes this emotion that is amazing, and I wonder if you were to give that to someone to add detail, would that emotion would that emotional connection still be there? Or would it get lost because of all, your eyes are looking everywhere else,
It's funny but it is, because I've been working on different movies, a lot of movies recently, and in one of them in particular, they started making CG tests, and I was just shocked that I was looking at my images in 3D, and they were just text, but the test alone, there was like images a lot like this, actually, tons of images like this, and they actually they managed to keep the look and feel and still like make it work in CG, and I was just really, really impressed. So it still works. So I guess I have no issue with that. People taking my work and just
kind of pushing it and going in more detail.
Yeah, especially the ones I'm commissioned to do, because at that point they're just they don't belong to me. And
and you're just a work for hire, you're a freelance artist.
Right.
So speaking. I'm sorry. Go ahead. You want to continue?
No, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say. So speaking of like just freelance, how have you managed? It's like, because one of the questions is, this student feels that there's a barrier to entry when it comes to freelancing for visual development. So he wanted to know, do you feel the same, or do you have any advice for trying to break in? Like, how does that work?
It's really interesting, because how do I start with answering this one? I get a question a lot. Like, for one thing, I have to tell you, as far as freelancing goes, I have so much work. I have to turn a lot of it down, and sometimes I accept it, and I just don't have time to finish it. I mean, I'm never like late. I'm always getting all my work done, or try to as much as I can. But there's so much work as a freelancer, or at least for me, for some of the friends I have, that is the most secure job I've ever had.
You're kidding.
Freelancers. No, it's just because I've been in companies. I've been in 3 companies full time, and each time I was always afraid of being laid off. I was never happy because I had bosses. I didn't like it, and it was never motivating. As a freelancer, I've been doing freelance work full time since 2005, 2006, I think.
Wow.
There's never been a day when I didn't have jobs, and usually multiple jobs. I think there was like one time, like, was it last year or 2 years ago, when the crisis was really big, that I went down to maybe 2 jobs at the most, at the least at once. Typically, I have 5 or 6 jobs going on
at the same time. So that's interesting. So when did that start? Okay, so you left this company working there full time, and then you're like, all right, I'm just going to do freelance. Did you call up?
No, that's the whole thing. They called me up. I was still at a company. Okay, it started actually before I was doing sketches of the day. Before I was doing images, I was doing animation. And so I was in Hawaii at the time. I was living in Hawaii, and then I was still doing my little Flash animation on the side and posting on the web. And this company, this guy, David Daniels, hey David, from Portland, called me. And David Daniels is this guy who did the first CG M&Ms. He's done the Pee-wee's Playhouse intros animation. Great, amazing animator, amazing storyteller. He called me up and, hey, I saw your work. We're starting this company. I'd like to know if you want to come and help us in a bunch of like cartoon work spots, and then maybe like you want to we can work with you, and maybe you can become a director eventually. Yada yada yada. I was like, sure. So I left Hawaii, went to Portland, and worked with those guys, and so that was my first entry into the commercial world. And I didn't have a contract with them. It was pretty much freelance, but the way they did freelance with it was like, it was like 7 days a week and 10, 12, 13, 14 hours a day. I would sleep there sometimes. I would stay there extremely late and just until the next morning. And I learned a lot about, like, that's where I actually learned how to be extremely fast. I was pretty fast, but with them it became super fast. And they taught me so much about the business, about like how to deal with stress, which is one of the big things about being a freelancer, is how to do multiple jobs and still keep your sanity. That was a big thing I had to learn, which was great actually. So I was working with them for a long time, and then it's like I was a freelancer with them, but it felt like full time because they had so much. They started out, you had 4 people in the room that was so small that one of us had to get up for the other to get out. It was really like that. And now they have like, I think last time I talked to them, which was a couple of days ago, they had about 100, over 100 employees.
Oh, wow.
And just, they're just doing great.
So that was your first start?
That was my first start as a freelancer with them, and that was doing animation, not storytelling. And not the illustration, it was just animation. And I became a director with them, and then they were really good about like helping me get to that point and just supporting me. It was great place to start. Then I came to San Francisco to be with this girl here on the right. Right now. And I was working at this company, and I was hired as a lead animator, but I didn't get to do any animation at all, or barely any. I was mainly managing teams. I would do a few sketches here and there, but there'd come times when we'd had to do creative stuff, and they would have to hire freelancers because it's cheaper for them to get a freelancer than us for a bunch of different reasons. And then there's a bunch of, I wasn't really happy there. I wasn't unhappy, but I wasn't really happy because I wasn't motivated by what I was doing. And that's why I started Sketches of the Day. When I first started there, it was a week before Comic-Con, and the people in this company, all the animators, there were 4 other animators in this company, left to go to Comic-Con. So I was there for a whole week by myself. And when they came back, they showed me all the books and stuff they had bought. And we decided that for the next Comic-Con, the next year, we would actually start doing sketches of the day, a sketch a day, and at the end of the year, make a book out of it. That was mainly me actually saying that, but they all agreed to do it. Make it a book, to have a sketchbook to sell at Comic-Con. They really didn't do it. I started doing it, and that's how I started doing my sketches of the day. And the first one I did was really simple, just one character, usually a monster in the beginning. And then evolve into what you're seeing right now. So I started doing that, and for about almost 6 months into it, I got my first call from Disney TV, who had seen
your sketch of the day
online. Yes, my sketches online, saying, "Hey, this is great. We are part of this short division, the shorts division at Disney. We're doing a new show. We like your style. We'd like to know if you want to do some art direction for us." And I was like, "Oh my God, that's amazing." So I started doing art direction for them while I was still working in this company as a freelancer. And then this project fell apart because they shut down that division of Disney, Disney TV. But then at that time, one of the main guys at Disney TV had seen the work I had done for them and asked me to do some more freelance work on some of the TV series pitches they had. I'm not sure what that is, but and so I kept doing some more work with them, and then I quit my job, my full-time job, because there's different things happening over there that weren't very pleasing. Nothing bad. It's just like, there came a point where okay, I'm done. And I remember the last day I was in that company, not the last day, it was the day before last, or the day before last, I got another call from this company that was, from Auburn actually, that was doing that's going to do this TV show for Nick Jr., and they would ask me to do the art direction for it as well. And so I started doing that, and after that I did more commercials, and it was the same thing. People just kept calling me. So I never really had to apply anywhere. So
that sketch of the day was essentially like your calling card.
It still is.
It still is. It's like, and you just have such a huge body of work. So that's I think for some of the guys out there that are more interested in trying to get more into freelance, it's really just putting your work out there, and showcasing your talent. And in this case, I think with your body of work, I think that's what makes it seem so amazing, is that you have so much work.
It's true, and not just it's not just the amount of work; it's the fact that you do it on a constant basis, so they keep seeing it. Yeah. I know we're getting closer. I mean, we're already past the half-hour mark.
You want to just start switching over, to Photoshop and as I said, some of the questions that we have. Yeah, exactly. Flash is perfect. Yeah, let's do it. I know a lot of the people here are asking more. They have more technical questions. I mean, obviously, guys, it's like we're a little limited on time, and so it's like I don't know how much. Yeah, I don't know how much Pascal is going to be able to get into it. But once again, it's like definitely if you're more interested in his work and his workflow and his technique and how he comes up with these images, make sure to check out his workshop. on cgmwonline.com. It's an amazing workshop where he goes into really in-depth detail of how he creates some of this art and his whole workflow and how he utilizes Flash, which was one of the things that completely threw me off when I was watching the workshop. I was like, Flash, that's just not something that, you see every day, someone utilizing it in the way that you do.
Yeah, actually, it's just to finish real quick what I was saying about the work. So basically, if you want to get a work or the way I got my foot into the door to do visual development is I can do sketches a day and post often or show your work often, because it's great if you do 1, 2, 3 good images, but if you only do 1, 2, 3 good images a year, it's not going to really entice people to come and look for you. But if you do a lot of images continuously, and they don't always have to be like tens, they can be like 5 or 6 or whatever. But as long as you do a lot with a consistent level, people will know, hey, that guy can produce work. Maybe it can be good for a job. And if they keep seeing it, they'll think of you for the next jobs they have. So that's how it works for me, at least.
Yeah. And as you're getting into it, I have just another question. How do you work out pricing when it comes to your freelance projects?
Well, I know that's a really good question, and I've been a little spoiled for that because I started working with a company in Portland, the ones that really it's called Vintage Lab, by the way, the one that really helped me with my debut, actually, if you want. And they were really good about like telling me what the prices in the industry were. When it came to doing visual development, I had a bit of a hard time in the beginning because I was used to those really big commercial budgets. And I remember the first ones I was throwing out, I was like, oh my god, they're so over, but people accepted. So yeah. But now I've been doing this for
a while.
Long time now.
Yeah.
So I have a good idea of like what the industry rate is. I also, and that's something you guys will have to be really self-aware of, is like I also know what I can bring to a project. I know where I fit in. I know more or less the level of what I am worth. So I'll be asking for a little bit more than an entry level because it's I know what I bring to a project. So talk to other people that are in the industry, ask them for the rates.
Their opinion and their rates. Is there any central website where you could find stuff like that, or is it just really just talking to different people and friends and seeing? I think
it's really talking to different people because it's funny. Sometimes you'll see some people are really really good being paid very low, and some people are less good being paid a lot of money from the same company. So it's a little bizarre. When I started doing visual development, they actually came to me telling me, this is how much we're going to pay you per week. I'm like, okay, at first it was fine, but then I realized that I was doing much more work per week than other people, and I stopped doing that per week, and that's per image, and I based it off pretty much what I could do, what they did, and that add a little bit more, and then so basically I tend to be paid per image, and if certain companies, like, DreamWorks and Disney, don't do per image, they do per week. So I calculate the amount of images I could do per week and give them a weekly rate. And this is how much I can do for this time. So it's good for them. But the pricing is always a little tricky. I just had more experience now. So.
Yeah. So we'll let you. Do you want me to ask you questions as you're doing this, or do you want to kind of just take over for the next 5-10 minutes and kind of do your own thing and talk about what you're doing?
No, actually, I'd like you guys to first of all, what do you guys want me to draw? What do you guys want me to demonstrate? Because, we can go in so many different ways. So I'd like...
Well, we were just listening to some jazz, right, earlier, so...
Something jazzy. Okay,
yeah.
So this is, let me see. Well, there are a couple of things you can do with jazz. There's the piano guy, there's a jazz guy. I mean, there's a bunch of different things. Let me see anything.
Someone's saying something moody.
Something moody.
Oh, no, moody.
Yeah.
So
it's funny because when I started, I never really have an idea where I go. Even there, like you see, I did this, but really I'm working here, and it doesn't mean this is going to be the final image either. I just go along the sketch. So obviously this is looks like it's going to be a piano. So I guess I'll do piano guy. So
how do you How do you find your camera angles? That's another thing. It's like the camera angles you have are just so dynamic. Like, is it something that you do? Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Go ahead. No, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. By the way, I tend to speak fast, so.
No, it's great. That means you can answer a lot of the questions we have, and you've been doing great. So it's perfect.
Okay, good.
And we're recording
this
anyway, so it's fun. We could, they could watch as many times later.
Yeah, or just email me, ask me questions if you want. For the camera angles, it's something I've always been fascinated by is space. Not outer space, but although I do like that too. But just space, like the space between buildings, for instance. I always find this part here more fascinating than this. But in order to see this, you have to see those two in order to create it, right? Mm-hmm. And that's the beginning of how I get interested in camera angles, because all the camera angles I have are made to create and showcase space, because also space is where the light comes from. That's how you see the spaces, through light and shadow. So that's something I just think about. I think about on a constant basis. I'll be walking on the streets, and I'll actually look out for lights. I'll look out for stories that are happening. I'll look out for the people that are in the street that are doing things. But I'll look out more specifically for something weird, like I'll be biking down the street and I'll be like thinking about how wide is this street exactly, or how big are those cars, and what is the space inside the car. I like doing this, especially when it's like it's either night or getting close to night and the cars have some light on inside. Then you see the space inside the car and it's moving along the road, and that's very magical to me. So I'm just interested in space, and when I choose a camera angle, especially when I get the above shot ones that seem to be pretty popular with people, I like to do it in a way that it will actually not just be the camera angle to be dramatic for the sake of being dramatic, but just to show a sense of scale, a sense of space. That's pretty much.
No, that makes sense.
How I think about it.
Someone was saying if you could draw a monster playing the piano.
A monster playing the piano? Sure, we could do that. But I like this guy, so we'll do this guy.
We'll stay with this guy.
Monster.
Yeah.
No, I'll do the monster, but maybe it's a duet. So.
Perfect. So, why Flash over Photoshop?
That's mainly laziness, actually. When I first got to the States, it was the first software I learned how to use. By the way, I'm saving. A folder I shouldn't be saving into, but that's fine. Every couple of minutes. Every couple of seconds, actually, I should say. So when I first got to the States, I'm not fans of computers. I have nothing against them. Mm-hmm. But it's not something, I don't know what processor I have. I don't know what speed I have on this one. It's not something that interests me at all. I'm just interested in being able to use it to create stuff. I don't know what type of monster you want, but go. Just,
whatever you're in the mood for, whatever feels good.
Okay, but so when I first got to the States and I got into digital drawing, Flash is what I had, and that's what I learned how to use, and I got too lazy to learn anything else. I do know that Photoshop is probably better, and I do know that there's a bunch of different softwares out there.
But it seems like you've done amazing, with that tool set, and I think it's one of those things. It's really the artist, not the tool. So
absolutely. I draw on paper still once in a while, not as much anymore because I'm very much like digital. I don't necessarily have a big affinity for drawing paper over digital. It's pretty much the same for me. And and then draw pretty much the same way on paper. I mean, you would recognize my drawings on paper because they look very similar to what I do. And actually, when my mom was here last time. Well, not last time, actually, a while ago. She sent us a box, or she brought a box of old stuff I had in my room before. Some drawings that I had done when I was still in college, or even before I was in college. And my style actually was already pretty angular, pretty graphic. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I didn't remember that.
how do you pick your colors? Your colors are just so vibrant.
Just like that.
So do you find yourself where you're constantly like you're like, oh, this color, this color code doesn't work. Let me switch it up. Let me make that light blue.
I do that. I do that all the time. I'm always like, I'm using colors to start, basically to block out forms, and a lot of times they'll stay pretty similar to what they are, but I'm not very good with colors as opposed to what most people think. And that's why I have to explain this.
Most people think you are amazing with colors, so.
Right, and let me explain this. I never was good with color. I never had an affinity with like colors. I'll see some artists out there, like Matt Critchak, who does like amazing work with color. And there's tons of others. I'm just thinking about him because I saw one in his piece that just blew me away not that long ago. I'm good with light, and I know how to work light in just about, I don't know, any situation, but in a lot of different situations. And I like thinking about how I can, I'll think of myself, I want to try lighting of January 31st at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon because it's a completely different one than like June 31st at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And the lighting affects the colors. So that's how I will pick my colors. I'll pick my colors on pretty much the type of lighting, type of nude, type of weather pattern that I want to create.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the blue, but then I'll start thinking about the lighting, and that lighting is going to completely affect this color. It's pretty much like, for instance, you're wearing a green sweater, and it's like, 3 o'clock in the afternoon. You go on the street and you see it's a green sweater. Then you see the same person wearing the same green sweater, or if you haven't seen that person, then you see the same person wearing the green sweater at like 9 o'clock at night, and obviously the color is different because it's nighttime, but you still know it's green. But it's not the same green because it's, it's night, so the light is not the same, so your green is actually very dark, and it's green. And that type of thing always fascinates me. Does that make sense what I'm saying, or am I just too artisty here?
No.
It's so that's actually what interests me in colors. It's like this ability that your brain has to recognize color because of its context, basically, or at least that's how I see it. I'm still trying to figure it out myself.
So where does that come from? Where does that observation come from in terms of your sense of color and light? Do you use a lot of references, or because I know like that one piece you said you were just inspired by, the heat, of the sun ray coming in, that one piece. But it's like, did you, are you looking at a picture? Are you looking at this scene coming up with it, or do you have tons of references?
No, I don't have any reference at all, actually. Like pretty much what I'm doing right now is exactly how I do my sketches of the day.
Do you take a lot of photographs?
No, I actually am very bad at that. Just time I take photographs, my wife just hates me. Because she is into photography, and she takes beautiful pictures of us and the kids. We try to take a picture of her, she's like, I don't look good in that picture. So it's, I'm really not a good photographer.
As I said, it's we won't have time to go into it, now, but, and obviously it's something you probably cover in your workshop, but, it's, you're like a savant in that way, because the thing that stands out the most about, for me at least, with your illustrations, it's just a sense of light and mood and color.
Okay, well,
and to think that you don't really, you just go with it. It's just something that almost just comes natural for you. I find that so amazing.
Okay, it comes natural, but there's a few things I have to say about that. I'm constantly thinking about it. I wake up in the morning, I think about it. I go to bed, I think about it. I'm playing with my kids, and I'm thinking about how the light is hitting them. I'm thinking about what is actually happening on their faces. I grew up in the south of France, where I remember very clearly as a kid, maybe 8 or 9, walking and seeing like, that shadow has blue in it. That's weird. It's something that's always fascinating me. So it's not something I'm just like, oh, I'm going to think about what does the lighting on Mars look like and do that. It's probably something I've seen and thought about before, and it's marked me. Like you're able to remember certain things about your childhood that no one else would remember simply because they're interested in that particular event. light and how it affects the world around you, your perception of depth, your perception of people, your perception of everything, is something that just fascinates me, more and more so as I go along.
Yeah.
And I don't think I've like reached half of it, or even a quarter of it. I think I know people keep saying that like I've really good sense of life, and I feel like I'm starting to understand a little bit of it. But the more I understand, the more I'm realizing, oh my God, there's so much more.
That's amazing. It's how do you deal with when you're doing multiple light sources?
That's actually fun. It's like candy for me, because it's candy because it's complicated.
Yeah.
Or actually, it's not complicated. I'm sorry, it's complex. Meaning that it's a bunch of different layers.
It's like a puzzle.
And I like thinking about exactly. It's exactly like a puzzle. You're trying to make the pieces fit together. So what I do for that, and that comes from my storytelling thing, is I'll try to figure out what is my main the main interest of the image. What is the main story I'm trying to say? Because that's another thing. Is like you can't just throw in lights like this. You have to make sure that they don't. Or I have to make sure that they don't compromise the rest of the image.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes they fail, by the way.
Yeah. So it looks like we have, where it's like, I want to be mindful of your time. We're at last 2-minute mark. Do you just?
Oh, really?
Yeah. That's the thing. When you're having fun, it flies. And obviously, a lot of these participants, have some, a few more questions. So. If it's fine with you, I want to just see if we go through a power round of some of these questions. If that's fine with you, Pascal, I want to be mindful
Absolutely.
of your time. So, do you use a Cintiq or a tablet?
Tablet.
Tablet. Okay. Have you found that working a particular style has been beneficial? Because usually employers like if you have multiple styles that you can do based on the projects that they want you to work on.
Yeah, no, I have my own style. I do different genres of drawings and stuff, but I'm not very good at doing different styles than what I do.
Okay. How do you approach perspective and composition when it comes to your characters?
Like this. No, I'm serious. This is I draw my grid on the ground, and as you can see, I did one at the very beginning. This thing here, this blue thing. This gives me all I need. It's like my 4 points. If you draw lines up like this, that gives me a sense of space, and I need that. Otherwise, I can't draw my characters. I can't draw my buildings. I need to figure out my space, and it's not true perspective.
It's definitely pushed. It's
pushed.
Almost stylized perspective.
Yeah, but it works for me.
Yeah.
See, this is a building, and this is the corner, and then you can add as many corners as you want.
I think that makes complete sense. It's really just pushed in stylized perspective, but it's still there. The structure is still there. Yeah.
As I said before, it's a sense of space that's interesting to me.
It goes back again to that word space.
Yep.
How do you know when a piece is done?
When I don't have time to work on it anymore. And when I film. A lot of time it's that, because I gave myself time limits to do my daily sketches. Lately, I've been pushing them a little bit more because I get more involved into them, and I shouldn't. But it's pretty much that when I can't add anything when it works, basically.
Yeah, when you just feel that it's right. How quickly on? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish that thought.
That's also why I call them sketches. I was realizing when I was in school that I had a hard time finishing images because I didn't understand what it meant to be finished. So I call those sketches so I don't have this mental block of trying to do a perfect piece. I'm just trying to do a piece that tells a story and creates a mood, and that people will look at and enjoy, and never have the pretension of doing a masterpiece.
It's just painting that moment.
Painting that moment.
That's great. So how quickly, and obviously it's evident here pretty fast, how quickly, on average, do you do these pieces? Like, when you do a sketch a day, are you spending 1 hour on that sketch? Are you spending 10 minutes?
Well, it depends. When I started, it was always under an hour. Then it went to about an hour and a half. Now it's between an hour and a half. Lately, there's been a few I've done this past couple of weeks have been a little bit over that. Actually, there have been a couple of them that were almost 3 hours just because I was waiting for client feedback and I wasn't really feeling like working, so spending some more time. But it's typically like between an hour and a half, I would say.
Okay. Is it hard when you're working on someone else's project and the style is just completely different?
Yeah, it doesn't really happen to me all that often.
It doesn't.
When that happens, when people ask me to do this, I usually say no, and I'll take another job that actually requires me for my particular style.
For your particular style, which makes complete sense. So the other question is, when you draw cityscapes and when lighting in a complex layout, do you use photo references or is everything off the head? And I think you answered that where most of it is just just make it up, which is amazing.
Yeah.
What are your average deadlines for freelance projects? Like, how long will a company give you?
That's really interesting. It's for commercials, you typically have like 4 to 6 weeks to do a commercial. Well, it's visual development. It never really comes into play for me because I'm fairly fast. So I never really ask the question. I just do it, and they're usually pretty happy with whatever I do.
Yeah.
In the time frame. But typically, I'll have a brief with them on one day, and 2 days later, I'll show them images.
And then you just go from there.
And then I go from there. Yeah.
Yeah. You mentioned I know you've worked on a bunch of different projects. Someone was saying that this reminds them of a preview they saw for an animation called, and I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Tout en haut du monde, Long Way North.
Okay. Cool.
Is that something that you were involved in?
Never heard of it. No,
oh,
never heard of it.
Okay, so I guess that answers that. Any tips on storytelling?
Yeah, hundreds of thousands actually. No, I'm kidding. Just keep your images clean, clear. By clean, I don't mean like necessarily the drawing style. Clear. If the audience cannot see what you're trying to say within the first half second, you've already lost that person. So make it as simple as possible. Use stick figures at the beginning if you, use stick figures at the beginning, and it would really, really, really help you establish what you're trying to say. And one tip I have that's just personal to me, and people at Pixar, people in different companies might not do the same thing, but as I was saying earlier, try to capture a moment that's in between moments. That really helps as well. Figuring out that what happened before, what's going to happen after, and always have the backstory in your head, because it helps you. The reason backstory is important is not, for me, the reason it's important is because it helps you add details that make sense. If people don't necessarily know what the backstory is, they'll see a detail, and for some reason they'll connect to some past experience they've had, and it will make sense. It will help ground your story to some sort of like reality thing.
Yeah. This is the last question, Pascal. You've been absolutely amazing throughout this entire session, and thank you for just taking your time to share your practice with us. But the last question is, and I'm going to see if I could rephrase this. My question is based in color and light. I would like to understand this tricky subject and get better at it. What practical advice can you give yourself if you were to go back in time and tell yourself something that would save you from a lot of headaches? What would it be?
I wouldn't because I think through the headaches I've had, I don't want to say that like you have to like go through a whole lot of pain to learn about stuff, but you do make a lot of mistakes, and you do learn more from your mistakes than you do learn from the successes. Because what I think you learn from mistakes is the ability to like think about what you've done that is wrong. You're not gonna like not do the mistake again afterwards, but you get the resilience of keep going. You try things, and sometimes mistakes is just the way you look at it. You'll do a mistake, and then you come back a few days later and you realize, oh wait, that was actually pretty good. There's something about this that I can use for my own work. So I feel like if I have to go back and tell my younger self, don't do this, I feel like, it's like this butterfly effect. All of a sudden, like a whole big, huge thing of my art wouldn't be there. Maybe I'd be doing like, real estate or voting or something. I'm serious. It's definitely something. You have to go through mistakes. What I would say, though, if you want to learn about color and lighting, start with black and whites. The way I did it was I had charcoal in school, in college. They did a lot of charcoal painting, or charcoal pieces, where when you use charcoal, you basically do it, or I did everything in black or very dark, and then I pulled my lights out of it, which is almost exactly the same process I do when I do my digital painting. For instance, I will be taking this and making it, I'll show you really quickly, and see, I usually do my line in Photoshop, but you can do it here. Basically do everything darker, and then pull my lights from there. However you want to pull your lights does not matter. It's just the principle that matters. Meaning that, like, don't necessarily learn a technique and not understand what it is. Just learn a technique because it reflects a sort of thought pattern you have about how to deal with light and color and shape and form and composition and everything else. So if I do this, you can already, this lighting here is probably not, I could pull it like this, and you will have the sense of it through the whole image like this that is actually lit.
Yeah.
That's how I do my lighting. It's like I will, and actually what I will do in order to really show this light, is I will probably create a shadow of the guy here, because when you have the shadow, you actually understand that you're looking at something that's lit. Sometimes you don't know that things are lit, because you need to see the shadow by contrast. You will actually see the light. That makes any sense, or is that?
Yeah, it does.
Okay.
Absolutely amazing.
So, I will pull my like this. Even like this, you can already tell that that's. I'll probably have to. Then I go around. You can already tell the light's going to come from this way, etc., etc. So that's how I would do it. And then, of course, I'll do it in Photoshop because that I know how to do it in Photoshop.
Okay, so then you would take that into Photoshop.
Well, actually, I would take this into Photoshop. Actually, I would take this. I was just showing you how to do lighting, how I do it my way right now. But whether I would be working with Flash or Paint or any other software I could learn, I would try to work my lighting the same way I would do it if I did charcoal or if I did anything else. I've done watercolors as well, where that was the opposite. In watercolors, I would actually paint the darkness and leave the light spots untouched, so that, and I would try to contrast my areas of colors to make the light come through. But it's the same thing. I'm thinking about shadows and how I can make the light come out of it rather than add the light to it, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. No, that definitely does. Well, Pascal, I think we're, to say we're out of town is an understatement. We're 10 minutes over, but once again, thank you so much for just taking your time to kind of go over your whole process and share your experience in your career with all of our participants and our attendees. We'd like to thank all of our attendees for showing up and watching Pascal talk about his whole process. And once again, everybody, we're going to have all of these interviews up on our interview site within the next week or so. We're creating a whole brand new site just for the interview with the master sessions. So definitely make sure to check out this interview, Pascal's interview, as well as a lot of our other amazing masters. Pascal, thank you so much, and hope you enjoy the rest of your weekend.
I will. And just really quickly, see, this is another way of doing it. Same thing, man. Just add shadow and then take it off. Sorry, I'm done. Okay.
No. It's perfectly fine. Thank you so much again, Pascal.
My pleasure.
Take care, everybody.
Have a good weekend, guys, and hope you liked it. I hope you learned something from it.
Cool.
Bye.
All right. Take care. Bye-bye.